Tom and I made an exploratory trip to Cuba to meet and talk to everyone, to get everyone very comfortable with meeting with us. And then we went again and then did those interviews. And we got some really incredible stories.
The CIA and the Mafia both declined to participate.
Oh. I'm actually really excited to do it because I like a lot of history things also related to Latin American history. And it's not something we see all the time, especially with something so intricate with the CIA and the mobs and what the Cuban Revolution meant to Latin America, to Argentina because of the Che Guevara and the relationship there. So I have to ask a few questions, mostly some about the repercussions of what doing this kind of show, and also about doing a documentary TV show, because the first time for me doing an interview about a documentary TV show. First of all, this project was something you pursued as Creative Chaos, or was something that they presented to you?
It was a project that was presented to us by two well-respected producers who do fiction, they don't do nonfiction. So they came to us thinking it could make a great docuseries. And we agreed because we grew up knowing this story and knowing the mythology around it. So we jumped at it and thought this will be so much fun.
So it was something that you both kind of liked before?
We have similar tastes. So we one of us likes something, generally we'll both like something.
Okay. This is hard for me to understand how you make the process of trying to set a TV show that is entertaining, but it also has the history part and it has to be accurate. You cannot mislead many things. How do you set up that when you choose to film some things and when you choose to do only footage for some things?
I think one of the, for us, we've made a lot of documentaries, and actually Tom is the one who always says that he can't be bored. The moment he feels bored, he cuts. And so for us, even though we're making something that's in documentary form, it is first and foremost entertainment. So our goal is to make sure that we bring this story to life. And we knew very early on, with every major person in the storyline dead except for one or two people, that we needed to make sure we brought it to life. So we made sure to incorporate certain elements, not only really great interviews, but also really beautifully done high-end recreations that we did on the backstages of Hollywood. Beautiful motion graphics that help bring a lot of the imagery to life. And it's the idea that we use all those elements together in unison to really create something that's exciting and fun while rooting it in the factual evidence. And everything in this story is rooted in factual evidence. And the base of that being a CIA document dump in 2017 and 2018 that is the root of the entire story. So everything is rooted in fact. But our first motivation is always, how do we tell an entertaining story? And how do we make sure that if it's going to be 6 episodes, you want to go from episode to episode to episode and not just get bored after 1 or 2.
The audience needs to binge the entire thing. And you need cliffhangers. You need to keep them engaged every step of the way. It's also his point about facts, that's obvious because it's a documentary. But in this case, it's not so obvious because so many people bring their own conspiracy theories to this story. And we had to make sure that it's understood that this is grounded only in factual evidence. So we actually cut to the documents. We cut to quotes in books and court testimony continually to say this is grounded in actual fact. We're not making stuff up. And all of the experts that we chose to cast were people who were Pulitzer Prize winners, award winners. They were extremely respected in each of their individual fields.
Well, you have a lot of testimonies. That was something I wanted to ask. How do you choose for so many people, not only based on the book, but so many other people? For example, you have a lot of Cubans talking. You have professors. You have Cubans that were exiled. How do you make that those choices?
It depends. So for sort of when it comes to the basic facts, some of those main voices that you saw, the academics, the Pulitzer Prize winners, we try to go to the best and go to the top, right? So the people who are the most respected in their field in those subjects, we go to them. So for example, when it came to talking about the CIA, the only person for us to talk to is Tim Weiner, because he wrote a very famous book called Legacy of Ashes, which won the Pulitzer Prize. So when we're talking about the authority on that subject, we go to him. When we talked about, well, how do we talk about the Cuban experience of this and what it was like to be in Cuba during the revolution, we said we have to go to Cuba. And we were very lucky that Tom had met someone actually from Mexico who had lived in Cuba and was an expert and knew a lot of people there, and he became our on-the-ground fixer. So we went to Cuba, and he brought us all these people, wonderful people who had been children's soldiers, people who had been in the special services and secret forces in Cuba, who could come and talk to us what it was like to be on that side. Because we knew we could get the exile side, we knew we would get the CIA perspective, the US perspective, but to get that perspective as well, we thought was really interesting and what would be unique. You don't see that in an American film. You don't see that aspect of storytelling, mainly because of the Cold War. Well, only because of the Cold War. So we thought that would be really important to bring that to the screen. So Tom and I made an exploratory trip to Cuba to meet and talk to everyone, to get everyone very comfortable with meeting with us. And then we went again and then did those interviews. And we got some really incredible stories.
The CIA and the Mafia both declined to participate.
You had two different directors of photography, one for the interviews and one for the reenactments. You have any ideas of where you wanted to go, like a reference of any other films, like mob films or something like that?
I would think The Godfather and Charade, movies like the old James Bond movies, the old ones, like Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, kind of helped set the visual palette for us. We knew this is kind of the way we want it. And in terms of the Keystone Cop quality, you think about the show Get Smart and how it kind of made fun of spies and spy activities, and even the Pink Panther. And a lot of set design, like I would screen grab from old movies and say, let's get that rifle framed in the background and put that behind Bissell's head. So a lot of the references come from old movies. And if it's an older person watching, they can have a lot of fun trying to figure out what's from where.
You have a lot of also reference to the pop culture, not of nowadays, because the Cold War was at the beginning of the everything we know now of Hollywood and everything. So it was interesting to see the tone, especially I think it was at the end of the first episode when you had this kind of joke about the spy that was actually the man that's supposed to inspire Mission Impossible.
This is really also the moment in history where the pop culture entertainment complex meets the political complex in the United States. And they come together, and they've since been, I think Ronald Reagan kind of would put the finishing touches on that. But ever since, you can't tell the two apart anymore.
It's really Frank Sinatra who did that in a way, right? Because Frank Sinatra really bridged the mafia world, the political world, and the entertainment world. So in a way, he's sort of the fulcrum of that. And that's why he's
the original George Clooney.
Yeah, exactly. Except for the mobster.
You know, the star of Ocean's 11.
Also, talk about all the things that you have to bring into the ground and say, this is not a theory. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is ground-based. But this actually is kind of crazy. It goes over reality. It feels like fiction because there were so many things that you cannot understand how this happened. Do you have anything that when you were doing the show and doing the research that you both went like, wow, I cannot believe that they did this or they went this way?
I think what's fascinating, a lot of people think Kennedy was the cause of this. Actually, it was Eisenhower. And it really, I would even argue the cause of this was D-Day. The cause of this was the end of World War II, because Eisenhower was the general who oversaw basically a bloodbath. And he was very fearful of ever having to repeat that again. So he really leaned into the idea of covert operations. And therefore, he gave the CIA a big portfolio to do things underground, undercover.
You know, he saw 1 million, American soldiers die. He said, well, why send 1 million when I can send 30 covert ops to have the same outcome? He was really averse to war and the military-industrial complex. So prior, not to get too granular, but prior to this, they were just an intelligence gathering organization. He legitimized them to be intelligence gathering and operations as well.
Which should not exist in the same organization because there's no check and balance.
What do you think the viewers of today's world can understand about seeing this and making a reference of what was nowadays, what is nowadays America and the foreign policies and what was in the 1960s?
I mean, I think one of the things is number one, how I think the most important thing is unintended blowback. We make a geopolitical choice to do something, and there are unintended consequences that inevitably happen. And then what is the reason for that geopolitical choice? What are the motivating factors? That's the first thing. How do we look at that? And then the second thing, the blowback that inevitably that occurs that has ramifications maybe a generation down the line, and that it is rooted in this time period. It starts with the Cold War, and it's just as relevant today and just as urgent today because we see it happening like a domino effect around the world.
And also, I think you see throughout this entire thing, the motivations of all of these very powerful characters, it all comes down to their personal demons and personal obsessions. Eisenhower, Kennedy, Giancana, Rosselli, that ultimately drive American and foreign policy in America. Think of George W. Bush and his father not finishing the Iraq War, Trump and Putin, and there's just so much that comes out of their own personal obsessions that ultimately drive our policies.
It's really interesting. I would love to talk with you guys for an hour, but I have to let you go and continue with the interviews. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Ilan.
Great meeting you.
Thank you so much.